Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 367th film from 2021. It's the Polish drama thriller called Primetime. It's directed by Jakub Piatek and stars Bartosz Bielenia, Magdalena, Poplawska and Andrzej Klak. I am Jesse, I'm your host. Thanks for joining me for this episode. Obviously, if you haven't seen this one before, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on because we will spoil this as we go. And we kick off with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film's all about. So this one, it's about a guy who takes a TV station hostage on New Year's Eve, wanting to broadcast a message. Intrigue. I think as we get through this episode, we're probably going to talk about why that's still intriguing, because there may not actually be a understanding behind what this message is, but that might be a part of the reason of the film, and it might annoy some people, but we'll get to that as we go. So how did this one end up on Netflix? What's the film all about? So Primetime, the title obviously relates to primetime television, so the time that everyone is sitting there watching TV when you can get the most viewers around the world. In Portuguese it's called We Interrupt the Programming. Not bad, because I don't know, actually. If we think about the film, I'm not sure much was really interrupted, but the other one in Romanian, it's Maximum Audience. I like that one too. So good titles. Let's talk a little bit more. So the film Primetime, it received Screen International's Best Pitch Award at the Polish Film Days in Wrocław in July of 2020. The film went on to be made, and then it had its world premiere at the 2021 Sundance Film Festival on January 30, 2021, in the World Cinema Dramatic Competition section. Apparently the film, it's based on true events when men stormed a television studio around the same time period where this film's set, which is just before Y2K, so it's New Year's Eve 1999. Just before the explosion of web popularity and the birth of YouTube, there were numerous incidents of break-into TV studios during live programs around the world, said Polish writer-director Piatek. Although our film is not a reconstruction of those events, we found a lot of rich inspiration in them, he said. Most of Primetime was actually shot in an old TV studio from the 1960s on the outskirts of Krakow, with professional TV technicians employed as extras operating the cameras. Expert advice during rehearsals and on set was offered by counter-terrorist specialists and those versed in negotiation techniques during hostage taking. So a bit of effort went into the making of this film. Using just the one location and working with theatre actors meant the production could focus on rehearsals ahead of the actual shoot. That is not always the case in Poland, is a quote, where people usually keep the money to use for the shooting. We had reserved a part of the budget for this, said Rosowski, the writer, I think, one of the writers. For weeks, we spent rehearsing with 2 weeks on set with working cameras and intercoms. The film's director of photography, Mikhail Luka, attended rehearsals with a small camera, and the footage was edited together by Piatek to see how the story was developing. The conditions under the coronavirus pandemic meant that the crew was smaller than usual, said Rosowski, highlighting that the production adhered to regulations set out by the Polish Film Institute, such as taking temperatures of cast and crew, wearing face coverings, and social distancing. One good thing was that we were not shooting in Warsaw, so people were not traveling back. One thing that was we're not shooting in Warsaw, so people were not traveling back to their homes after filming each day, he said. We all lived together in the same building about 10 minutes from the studio set, and everyone treated the situation very seriously. Nobody was going off to the pub in the evenings and mixing with people outside the production. So obviously all committed to making sure this all got done. The director did describe the film as a fantasy about revolt and rebellion. Interesting. The funding for this one, the Polish Film Institute put up 40% of the film's €1 million budget, with a further 20% coming from private broadcaster TVN. As I said before, this did debut at Sundance, and it hit Netflix. This is interesting. I've got this in our list of where we're at because I had the date as the 14th of April 2021. IMDb does say the 30th of June 2021 on Netflix. So a little bit of conjecture around when this actually hit Netflix. We're putting in this order. So the 14th of April 2021, as I said before, filmed in Warsaw, Krakow, a little bit of Lodz all around Poland. This did at the Polish Film Festival it had some nominations. It was nominated for Best Film, for the Best Score, and Best Supporting Actor. It was also nominated at the Sundance Film Awards for Best Dramatic World Cinema at the Grand Jury Prize too. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? On Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at 53%. That's on 19 reviews, so that is rotten from the critics. There is not enough there from the audience for this one, which is interesting. On IMDb, it's only got 2,000 ratings, so not much, but it sits at a 5.2 out of 10, so that's okay. Letterboxd, a 2.9 out of 5 on 3,300 ratings, so that's fairly solid, and it's been logged by 4,200 people. On Metacritic, it sits at... Well, it doesn't have anything on Metacritic, so I'm not going to mention that. That is where we're at for this one. So what are my early thoughts? What did I like this one? Did I not? Let's find out. It's slow, I guess, and on the surface, it's probably going to frustrate a lot of viewers with almost what feels like a bit of a letdown with the plot, but I enjoyed looking beneath the surface. So for me, I did enjoy this. I thought this had a lot to say. So let's get into the characters. Let's talk about it. We've got to start off with Sebastian. Sebastian is this guy, we see him at the start of the film, seedy-looking guy, wearing like a cap, a hoodie, smoking, in the shadows. He's the guy that takes over this TV station, and he wants to do whatever he can to be on live TV. And I guess you've got to ask the question, why? There is no real answer in this film, and we'll talk about that more. But his father has pretty much disowned him, so... You know, what does he desperately need to tell the world? He burns his actual speech that he had, so the audience were never going to know, but something burns within him, I guess, to speak the truth of something or some kind. So that's an interesting sort of little thought for him. He seems like a almost genuine, caring person. Like we're going to talk about the hostages that he takes, and I don't think he wants to see them get hurt. He's always a bit worried about how they're going and what's going to happen to them. So, very intriguing character, Sebastian. Mira is the one of the hostages. She's this failed actress who's working as a host on television. She arrives so late to work that they've already got a replacement set up to step in for her, and she doesn't even care. She's not even apologetic. So that's the sort of person she is. She speaks too much. She hams up every situation to create herself almost as the victim in any sort of situation, including this hostage situation too. She also doesn't take things seriously, I guess, when the hostage situation, I've said situation a lot, but when the hostage situation takes off, she sort of thinks it's a joke, and I guess she needs a little bit of a reality check, and maybe this is her almost helping or empathizing with Sebastian and his cause towards the end, and why she sort of helps him rather than just being that person that thinks, I'll help him to get myself out of this situation. It's almost like she wants to see him succeed in whatever it is he wants to do. Gregors is the other hostage. He's the security guard from the TV station. He's caught up in this whole thing, and he's a man of very few words, realistically. But the words he does say, he says, I have family at home, which is a lie, and it's for self-protection a little bit too. He's given the opportunity to leave this situation, but doesn't, and he almost stands by Sebastian, the hostage taker, almost empathizing or connecting with him on not having a say in society himself, I think. I think he's worked at this TV station he mentions for 2 years, and he appears to have almost been ignored his whole time there. So for him, this is a guy that's actually paying him attention, even if it's a situation that you don't want to be connecting with someone who's committing a crime, but he feels a little bit like, well, I'm in the limelight now almost. The other few people I'll talk about, Laura, she's the veteran producer. She's the one in charge of the situation. We see her throughout. We see her at the start and almost little bits throughout, but at the end she walks away with a taped recording of the evening, and I think this is almost showing that she'll probably sell it and profit for herself. And is that the idea that she's one of the people Sebastian wants to take down, those who sell stories of the week for profit? It's an interesting little thought for that one. The other characters, they're all pretty useless cops, negotiators. There's this guy called Piotr, the commander. Lena steps in for a while. They all have little bits of dialogue, but this isn't their film. This film belongs to everyone else. The director, Jakub Piatek. First feature film, some shorts, some documentaries, some television in Poland as well. So carving up a little bit of a career himself. But this is the time where we talk about some scenes. What are some scenes that stood out? What are some scenes that didn't work? So the things that worked, there's this scene where Sebastian, the guy who's taking everyone hostage, his dad comes to talk to him, to sort of talk him down, and Sebastian straight away doesn't want him there, wants him to go, but the dad presses him about his speech impediment and telling him to talk normally. And Sebastian almost, this infuriates him more and doesn't back down and has a go at him about his new wife and how's she going and where's mum. And then the dad goes hard. He does a stuttering impersonation of his own son, as well as, yelling at him that he's going to go to prison, and makes a comment about, you're going to get it in the bum and things like that. And it's very heartbreaking to see a father talk to a son like that, almost no connection whatsoever. And the dad, he finishes with this interview with Lena, one of the negotiators, saying that he doesn't know who his son is anymore. It just showed a lot of the distance from his family and why he might have been put in a situation where he takes over a television station. I think that was interesting. The other thing I liked, Mira has... you can tell she's had enough of this situation and the delays from the TV team, not wanting to put him on air. So she uses the phone that's on set to call a friend to get Sebastian an interview sort of off-site. And this hurries things up a lot. I thought it was clever and sort of showed a little bit of insight into her too. Things that didn't work. There's a scene where Gregor's, the security guard, he has this fainting episode. It just seemed too easy in that moment for him, who he wakes up, and as well as having Mira there as well, for the two of them to take Sebastian out. I didn't like it, but maybe the point was that neither of them actually wanted to see the situation end, and they sort of wanted to see almost what his point was in holding up this television station. The other thing that didn't work for me, there's a moment where Sebastian, they're waiting for the TV wigs to get them on air, and Sebastian pulls out a joint, and they all share it. Security guard Gregor's as well as Mira, and they go on this drug high, sort of followed by munchies. It just wasn't needed. I'm not sure what that added to the film. Other than that, what are some themes, some ideas? This is saying a lot, I think. Like the idea of Y2K. This is happening on New Year's Eve, 1999, when people filled their homes with food. They thought technology was going to disappear. It was going to destroy the world. And what better way to do this through TV? And the idea of people celebrating New Year's Eve and those who are struggling through what was happening. We see this on the televisions throughout the film. And obviously TV being such a big thing at the time too, that the idea that everyone wants to be on TV, it's such seems like such a cool thing to do. There's a lot on television throughout the scenes as well, in the control room, where we're seeing what's playing on all the different television stations about what's happening in Poland at the time too. Obviously the idea that Poland was still coming to terms with the demise of communism at this stage. I think they joined NATO in 1999 as well, so a big year there. There's protests on television at the time from labour workers and farmers, and anxiety and tension in the country too. Especially there's this interview that's very purposeful, where there's this coverage of a bunch of young people all with goals of leaving Poland to better themselves. So that idea of escapism almost. And the president, it's all about the president's speech on New Year's Eve, a bit like the Queen does her Christmas speech, I guess, as well. But the president in his speech promotes peace and not ruling with force. So are these all things that Sebastian's trying to push in taking over this television station and making his own speech, which we never actually get to see. The idea too of victims, and who's the victim in any situation. The idea of stopping and listening to what someone has to say, rather than making excuses like they do in this film and ignoring the real situation at hand and just pushing and continuing to ignore. I think that's a very interesting thing to take away too. Some other takeaways from this film. I did read online that the English dub for this film was so bad. So I went back and watched a couple of scenes. It's really bad, and there's so much change from the subtitles that are translated from Polish. I think this is another good reason why you should always watch a film in its original language. Some questions, some pondering, some thoughts. There's a few things that I pondered about this film. I think I've mentioned this a few times, the idea that the audience is never told Sebastian's motives or what he's trying to do. Like, why is this the case? And does this fail the narrative as a whole and make the film almost pointless? That's what a few people, I believe, would think. But I think maybe it's a clever move to focus on what led to Sebastian where he was, rather than not the why or the what. I think someone wanting to speak up and say what he thinks before this age of social media, where you can push out a message so easily, the only way you can get a mainstream message to a big audience was through television. So maybe that's an interesting thing to take away. We do see Sebastian in this film. He calls a guy early on called David and tells him to turn his TV on. Just an interesting little side thought, because the police and the interrogators look into this David guy and they're like, there's nothing that we need to know about him. but obviously he's important enough for Sebastian to want him to watch this broadcast. Who is he, and what does he mean to Sebastian? Possibly is he his lover, and that's why his dad is so against him, because he can't deal with that. I'm not sure. It's an interesting little thing that's not answered as well. Mira's watch. So at the start, to keep track of time, Sebastian takes it off her. But then at the end, he gives it to Gregors as he lets him escape. And there's this shot, like Gregors thanks him for it, and there's this final shot of him outside looking at the street light that's at, it's nighttime out there. It's past midnight. It's almost like he's contemplating life. And is this wristwatch, a symbol of wealth that Mira, as a TV presenter, had, and Gregors doesn't, and he realizes that this is his time to move on in life and find a better goal and a better workplace, because, as I mentioned before, I feel like he felt almost that he'd been neglected or ignored in this workplace. So, interesting thing there. Through the negotiators, there's a few quotes of the legal system and the laws and what happens if you take people hostage. And I thought it was interesting that they mentioned that if you take people hostage in Poland but you release them, that there's no penalty. I thought that was a little bit of a weird thing, an interesting sort of thing. Is that true? Is that right? And finally, at the end, Sebastian has this gun that he's used to create havoc across this TV station all night. And at the end, we see that he didn't actually have any bullets in the gun. So he never had any intention of actually harming anyone. And the same idea with, he plays around that he's got a bomb in his backpack too. Obviously, that's a fake out too. So what did this guy actually want? He seems like maybe he was a peaceful guy. I'm intrigued. I wonder what was on that script or that speech that he burnt up. Other than that, we're ready to wrap this one up. We give a film a rating out of 5 on this show. I think you can probably tell I enjoyed this. I liked the questions that it left me with. I think it was effectively made with quite a bit to say, lots of things to question, lots of things to ponder. Obviously, not much happens in the movie, but there is so much to think about. So I think it's worth a watch. I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. Solid for me, 3 out of 5. We are on socials. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, and we have X, formerly known as Twitter. For this episode, the question I wanted to put out there was, how much linear television do you watch a week? This is in reference to a line in the film that apparently in 1999, Poles or Polish people watched 4 hours of television a day. That's wild. Obviously, I doubt there are many people that would watch 4 hours of linear TV a day, maybe some broadcast sport, but I would suggest that our viewing habits have transitioned across to the streaming. But I still feel like 4 hours of streaming content a day is an awful lot, but maybe there are people that watch more than that. Let me know. Really interested in your thoughts. We are back next week. Next week, we do have another international film from 2021. This one's from Japan. It's a psychological thriller-romance called Ride or Die. It's directed by Ruichi Hiroki and stars Kiko Mizuhara and Honami Sato. So give that one a watch if you're interested. I'll be talking about that one next week. And as always, thanks for joining me and getting into this film.